We let it roll, baby. Let it roll. Let it roll. Celtics. Huge bounce back victory, fellas. I'm Justin Lowe. That's Seamus Arlingo, Ian Angelo, and we got Nick Franco here for Celtics Talk Weekly's Postgame Live. The Boston Celtics defeat the Miami Heat on a second night of a back-to-back shorthanded, 108-89. The Celtics were shorthanded. The Heat were shorthanded. It was just felt like a Summer League game out there, fellas, but the Celtics got the job done as I dropped my cell phone on the floor. We'll start with Ian. Ian, welcome in. This was a game where the Celtics coming in, obviously missing four big key rotational players, but they got the job done here on a second night of a back-to-back. Jaylen Brown and Derek White both returning from injury. Jason Tatum played after coming into today on the injury report. What did you think of this game?
It's that next man up mentality, man.
Yeah.
We know we have the superstars. We have Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Derek White. I mean, you have those guys, but when you get the contributions from guys like Drew Peterson, Luke Cornett, Neemias Queta had some pretty solid moments, and of course, Peyton Pritchard, who might be cementing himself out of the I wouldn't say out of the stay ready group, but he is definitely closer to a star level player on this team with the way that he's been playing this season than not. So it's been insane to watch Peyton Pritchard play basketball over the last, beginning of this season, I think. And that's just what you need to do. It's against the Miami Heat, where even though there's no Jimmy Butler, the Heat are going to play hard no matter what. So you have to go out there, you have to be out there, and you have to play your best. And Celtics, like you said, they were out four rotation players, and Jason Tatum didn't have the greatest game ever, and the Celtics still blew him out by damn near 20. So,
Right.
I mean, at that point, the rest of the league watching this game, like, what do you do?
Let's start with this, Justin. Our predictions came true from last night. No Horford, no Porzingis, no Holiday in this game, no Hauser, of course, as well. We didn't predict that one. But the other three, we were speculating heavily. They came into the Cavaliers game questionable, and tonight they don't play at all. And honestly, this is one of the games that the NBA, the league, doesn't exactly like to see on the second night of a back-to-back because, of course, the Boston Celtics and Miami Heat, they're both coming into this game on the second night of a back-to-back. The Miami Heat were in Toronto last night, while the Celtics, they were just a couple hours south there in Cleveland. And no Jimmy Butler, no Kristaps Porzingis, no, I'm going to say Kristaps Porzingis again, no Al Horford, and no Drew Holiday. And this is one of those, everybody's injured, but really it's a load management game for these guys. Right. It's a load management game. And, of course, we saw the second group come in off the bench. We saw Jordan Walsh start. We saw Drew Peterson, more valiant minutes off the bench for this Celtics team tonight. And, of course, we saw last night, we talked about, too, we didn't see him last night in Cleveland. We thought, hey, we might see him in this game. We saw Xavier Tillman tonight and Luke Cornett. We only saw him 8 minutes last night, but he dominated this game tonight. And that was really the story for the Celtics against the Miami Heat. The Celtics bench just came in and absolutely dominated tonight's game, along with the starters, Peyton Pritchard, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown. They were all phenomenal tonight. Now, Tatum and Brown didn't quite have the shooting performances going, but they were very, very aggressive in leading the offense and, of course, leading the defense out on the floor. In Miami, the whole game didn't have answers for what the Celtics threw at them. And I know we call this a rivalry, folks. And, of course, I think let's see. I don't know. I don't want to throw out the stat and get it wrong here, so I'm not going to throw it out. But essentially, the Celtics and the Heat, they played more than any other team in the NBA in terms of the combinations this decade. So this is technically a rivalry, but realistically, it's tilting so far over to the Celtics' favor right now that, I don't know, the Miami Heat, they're just no competition for the Celtics anymore, even though the Celtics, they throw out essentially the main Celtics tonight.
What's the Joel Embiid meme? It's not a rivalry. They always just kick our ass. I think
we took care of the Sixers a long time ago. Now it's the Heat. It's like every team cannot outlast us. The Nets, no. Sorry, guys. There's none of them.
Yeah, that was the we saw a completely different mentality. The team had to step up. The individual players had to play as a team tonight, and we saw that dog mentality out of the Celtics that we haven't seen this season, dare to say. I think that they have been playing a much more conservative ball recently. This was the first time in the first quarter you would see them attacking the rim before trying to get their three-point shot to fall. They were getting their close looks. They were banging bodies down low. They were doing a great job of securing defense. Luke Cornett on Bam Adebayo was phenomenal tonight. He stepped up huge with the Porzingis and Horford out. And I think this was a very big game for the players that we aren't used to seeing and the players that we've seen struggle recently and trying to find their role. Tonight they had to play their position and didn't have stars to rely on, and they had to be the stars tonight, and I think they did a great job of that.
No, absolutely. Let's take a look at tonight's lead tracker now. A lot of green on that lead tracker, fellas. The only red you see is in the first few minutes of the game. Here we go. The Celtics' largest lead tonight was 27 points at one point. Miami, 7-point lead in that first quarter, actually led the game 7-0 last night. Celtics trailed 8-0 to the Cleveland Cavaliers, made it a ball game. But ultimately tonight, it was just all Celtics. As the second half went on, you could tell the lead just kept growing and growing and growing for the Celtics. And Seamus, I feel like that's very, very important to see it growing and growing and growing, because last night in that second half, we thought the lead was going to keep growing, and all of a sudden it slimmed with about 5 minutes left, and the lead kept growing in the final few moments for the Cleveland Cavaliers, ultimately winning by 4 points last night. So what did you like specifically throughout the course of this game from the Boston Celtics, maybe compared to last night, 24 hours ago? Because as you saw in that lead tracker, there was a lot of green, and it was consistent tonight.
Well, I think in every single basketball game, a team is just not going to blow the other team out of the water. There are going to be runs on both sides of the floor, and that's what basketball is. It's a game of runs. And the Celtics, they really allowed two big runs in this game. They weren't even that big, and they were both this is one thing the Celtics do need to clean up a little bit. It was at the beginning of the game, started out 7-0, and of course to start the second half, the Miami Heat, they actually went on the exact same run, 7-0 to start the second half. But how did the Celtics respond in those two instances? Well, first off, they went 14-2. Or sorry, not 14-2, 17-2. They were 14-2, and then they hit another three. It was 17-2 in the first half after the game started, after a 7-0 run, made it into a 17-9 game. And then, of course, to start the second half, if I have the number here exactly, I believe the Celtics, they responded with an 8-0 run after the 7-0 run, and then it turned into a 13-3 run after that Miami Heat run. And that was the difference between tonight and yesterday night, where the Cleveland Cavaliers, when they went on a run, there was simply no response from the Celtics. There really wasn't. After the portion where Jason Tatum was on the bench, the Celtics came back into the game, or Jason Tatum came back into the game. The Celtics fought their way back from a deficit in that second quarter, had an awesome third quarter, outscoring the Cavaliers by 14 points. Outside of those two runs, the fourth quarter, the Cavaliers went on a run. Celtics never responded down the stretch yet. We saw really two runs out of the Miami Heat tonight, two runs, and it was at the beginning of the game and the beginning of the second half. And right off the bat, once those runs transpired, the Celtics, Joe Mazzulla, they called timeout, and coming out of the timeouts both times, the Celtics responded and really never let off the gas after they resurmounted their lead. And we saw on that lead tracker, really the entire game, outside of the fourth quarter in garbage time, which the team was outscored by a little bit in garbage time, just a little bit. They won every single quarter. So you cannot complain too much about tonight's game whatsoever for the Celtics, especially it being a bounce back game on the second night of a back-to-back after last night's just horrendous loss in Cleveland.
Well, last night compared to tonight, Ian, the Celtics defense brought it tonight. And listen, I understand Miami. They were down some fellas as well, one of those fellas being Jimmy Butler. But I feel as if the Celtics defense tonight was very, very sharp. And that's something that we've talked about on the show, that if there is a weakness to this team, it would be their defense, specifically down there inside the paint. Tonight, we didn't see that. Tonight, I believe Miami had 45 first-half points. And, Ian, if you watched the game last night, the Cavaliers had 43 points in the fourth quarter. What did you see different? Specifically defensively tonight from the Boston Celtics?
Well, defensively, I think it all started with Lukembe Mutombo in the paint.
Oh, that's tough. That's a tough line.
Luke Cornett, 6 blocks tonight for Luke Cornett, putting the absolute clamps on Bam Adebayo for most of this game until garbage time. Yeah, I mean, Luke Cornett, we talk about Luke Cornett and I'm not saying we don't expect anything from him, but at the same time, he doesn't have the highest expectations when it comes to a big man off the bench for this team. But when Luke Cornett has a good game, it pays off in spades for the Celtics. Tonight was one of those games where Luke Cornett just kind of felt like he could do no wrong, especially when it came to defending the Miami Heat. Bam Adebayo, who's a great player in this league. So it's one of those things where you have no Kristaps Porzingis, you have no Al Horford. You think it might just be a layup line to the rim, and it didn't happen that way. Luke Cornett was great. Neemias Queta played pretty solidly. Even Xavier Tillman, who, he didn't have a great game tonight, but he was out there. He was definitely out there. He was doing things.
He was there.
He definitely played basketball tonight. I cannot take that away from him. And Drew Peterson, man, I don't know. He's a lot better defender than I thought he was. I watched him in Maine a lot last year, and maybe I just never noticed it. But I mean, I knew he was always a shooter. But I mean, he held his own. He was switched on to Tyler Hero a lot. He held his own on him. He was switched on to Darius Garland a lot last night. He held his own. It's kind of one of the things where, I mean, the Celtics just find ways that, they just, they can clone, guys to just fit any role they need them to fit, and they'll find it.
It's funny you mentioned that about Drew Peterson, Ian, because 24 hours ago, I mentioned that same thing. Drew Peterson coming into these last 2 games specifically, if you didn't know Drew Peterson, if you knew one thing about Drew Peterson, it was his shooting. It was about his 3-point shooting. And not that, I mean, I believe he shot 2 of 5 last night, 2 of 5 again tonight, 4 of 10 for 40% clip in the last 2 games, which is pretty solid. It's been his defense for me, his defense and his rebounding as well. He was all over the glass tonight, as well as last night. When Drew Peterson can, I mentioned something. I can't describe it. His hips are almost locked, and he's very engaged defensively. And I didn't know he had that. And you and I were courtside last year in the G League Finals game, Ian, and I didn't know Drew Peterson have that, and it was right in front of me the entire time. But Franco,
let's be honest here. That game did not have a whole lot of defense on the Celtics end. So
no, Franco, I. In this game tonight, we were talking about a little bit last night, but the production without Jason Tatum on the court has been treacherous at times. Tonight, Tatum shot 7 of 21 from the floor. It was not his night, but the Celtics were able to survive. Jaylen Brown back in the lineup, you think that had anything to do with it? You think it's the role players? Tonight was a lot better, I noticed, in the non-Jason Tatum minutes. The Celtics were definitely able, even Peyton Pritchard, who struggled last night early in that second quarter, to get things going offensively. That didn't really seem to have a problem tonight, Franco.
It was all about his co-star Jaylen Brown tonight. I think having that yin and yang type of deal with them and being able to have Tatum not playing too well and having Brown pick up on the efficiency. He wasn't taking dumb shots. He wasn't forcing shots. I think he was doing a great job of getting to the rim efficiently tonight. And he was also working his way around the court. And what I've been harping on during these close games is we've been seeing a lot of independent ball, but this was the first time you had to see this team playing as a collective. I think they did a fantastic job. Drew Peterson, he's done a great job he looked very comfortable out there. You would have thought that he's been playing all season with the team and has been in this rotation. He made a couple of phenomenal passes. He would drive to the lane. He found I remember there was one play that he was able to find Tatum on the corner, and
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting him to be able to make that read. Not taking anything away from his game, but I wasn't familiar with your game, as Shaq would say. I think that he was doing a great job of filling in, and we saw those players do a lot of being able to have that chance to make their opportunities felt.
Yeah, and it's a big testament to the entire developmental staff on the Celtics that all these guys
Right.
can come in and play big minutes right off the bat, and like you said, Franco, feel like they're comfortable and even look like they're comfortable out on the floor because really, in some occasions around the NBA, guys come in, they're on ice for the whole season. Drew Peterson before last night played 20, I believe played 25 minutes last night,
And
and before that, he played 30 minutes his entire career.
Yeah.
And nobody was familiar with the Celtics or Drew Peterson, which a lot of people are not around the NBA. They would not have known that by his play whatsoever, and that was really the case for multiple guys tonight. I want to highlight too, Baylor Shireman got a little bit of a run out there, didn't do too much. He was there for 10 minutes tonight, but Baylor Shireman.
Oh,
What, Justin?
oh, jeez.
I didn't know about this.
No, sorry, the connection was
Justin
Go ahead.
avidly hates Billy Sharp.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Why is
He's
that?
our next guest.
All right.
Go ahead.
Well,
No,
I was just
that was the
calling out
that was the Wi-Fi. I don't know what happened. That was just an odd time to cut out, in my opinion. I don't know what that
I was
about.
just calling him out. I was just saying we haven't seen much of him this season in Maine. All right, Maine. Yeah,
Yeah.
I should say
Well,
we haven't seen much of him this season in Boston. In Maine, he's been all right
He's
up
been
in
balling.
Maine. So we saw a couple of these guys, and it's a really big testament to our developmental staff, both with the Maine Celtics and of course the Boston Celtics and our head coaching staff too. Just getting these guys ready to play on these nights because we really haven't had a ton of these occasions this season so far where we're playing a back-to-back, two tough teams. Normally you'd expect the Miami Heat, there were a couple of guys in the Miami Heat. I know that the Miami Heat, they really didn't come out with a lot of force tonight, but they had a lot of guys out there too who are not quite used to playing. And I thought a couple of those guys were better than expected, even though the final score and the discrepancy probably didn't tell us that story too much. But the guys in which the Miami Heat had out there who didn't play too much or who don't play too much, they were a little bit better as well tonight. And those are two tough teams you face back to back. The Cleveland Cavaliers, of course, you're facing the number one seed in the East, who the Celtics are trying to become again after holding it for nearly a year. You faced the Cavaliers last night, and the Miami Heat tonight, a very, very common opponent. And we blow them out. We blow them out of the water and play Geno time with guys who are really used to playing in Maine. So big shout out to the Celtics coaching staff, Celtics developmental staff up with the Maine Celtics, and of course all the players who tonight had to step into bigger minutes than they're used to.
Jaylen Brown, fellas. Jaylen Brown tonight for me. Here's a guy who has missed 5 games so far this season out of 20. This is a guy who was on the injury report yesterday due to an illness. On the injury report today, up until pretty much maybe a half hour to 45 minutes before tip-off, battling an illness, comes in tonight.
It might have been a legitimate illness too.
Another great start for Jaylen Brown. I believe he started 3 of 12, but maybe not percentage-wise a great start, but the looks-wise in the decision-making. We've talked about it in the post-game show. We have a YouTube video up right now, one of our most recent videos, talking about Jaylen Brown, courtesy of Seamus. What has been going on with Jaylen Brown? He's been settling for a lot of 3-point shots. He's looked off. Is it the hip flexor? Is it an injury that we're worried about? Is it a hamstring? Tonight, Jaylen Brown was ultra aggressive, Ian, not settling for shots, getting to the basket, drawing fouls. I think he had 10 or 12 free throws tonight, getting himself to the foul line, really playing enforcer tonight for the Celtics. And we talk about this all the time with Jason Tatum. Jason Tatum wakes up, realizes he's 6'10", gets to the basket, one of the best players, if not the best player in the entire association. So when Jaylen Brown does that, Ian, and Seamus mentioned yesterday about how much muscle Jaylen Brown has put on this offseason, it really opens up the floor for the Celtics, and you're going to see the Celtics blow out a lot of teams when these guys are playing like this.
Oh, yeah. I mean, let's be honest here. Jaylen Brown's greatest strength is his ability to drive to the rim and his athleticism. You can talk about the Minnesota broadcast from a few weeks ago when they were saying, "Oh, Jaylen Brown's shot is, it's not falling this year."
It's terrible.
Well, I mean, let's
Right.
be honest here. Like we've said before, he hasn't played, consistently enough this season, I feel like, to really get a groove for his shot. Today, his shot looked great. And when it's going in, obviously that's kind of like icing on the cake. But the most important thing to watch for Jaylen Brown is how aggressive he is driving to the rim. And tonight, I mean, they've had Bam Adebayo on him for most of this game, and Jaylen Brown didn't care. He was right there. He was shooting over Bam Adebayo. He was shooting over anybody he wanted to. He was attacking the rim, and like maybe the shooting percentages aren't looking great sometimes, but Jaylen Brown's playing the game that he knows how to play. If the shots aren't falling, I'm not really concerned. the water will find its level, even if he's having a bad shooting performance. But tonight he looked aggressive. He hunted Tyler Hero most of this game. Anytime Tyler Hero was on the court and Jaylen Brown was on the court, Jaylen Brown was doing the most he could to hunt Tyler Hero. So it's just kind of one of those things where I'm not concerned about Jaylen Brown. He knows his game. He's playing his game, and it looks amazing when all of his shots are going in like they were tonight.
Yeah, and Justin, you mentioned his free throw shooting. The Celtics on the night took 13 free throws as a team. 10 of them came from Jaylen Brown tonight, and I think that shows a lot to him just bullying the Miami Heat down inside the paint. Now, he was only 8 of 21 on the night, but I felt as if the aggression from Jaylen Brown was there the entirety of the game, every minute that he was in the game. And he was in an interview with Abby Chin after the game, and I believe, we talked about load management, maybe some of these injuries, they're a little made up. He was out with an illness last night in a ultra important game. Or to us, of course, looks like ultra important. I would think that to the teams as well, the Cavs and the Celtics, it was pretty important for the number one in the East as well. So I would think that maybe Jaylen Brown does actually play that game if he's not sick, and this isn't just some kind of, back-to-back Jaylen Brown's not going to play one or the other. I believe Jaylen Brown might not have actually been feeling all that well. He comes out and plays tonight, and he's just constantly taking the ball to the rack, like you said, Ian, just constantly hunting those mismatches on Tyler Hero. And I think up to this point, we got to say, I don't think Jaylen Brown likes Tyler Hero all that much. I really don't. I don't think many people in Celtics Nation like Tyler Hero that much at all. I think a long time ago we probably wanted him on the team after just missing out on him by one selection in the 2019 NBA draft. But afterwards, it was like, okay, he's beating us on the way to the finals, dropping 37 on us in the bubble. And of course, we've just faced the Miami Heat about 3 different times in the playoffs since that point. So Jaylen Brown and Tyler Hero, definitely some history there. Jaylen Brown does not take these matchups too lightly, the matchups of historic means behind them at all. And you could see it in Jaylen Brown tonight. You could definitely see it out on the floor. So kudos, JB. Not the best of shooting nights, but his aggression was there. And you really want to see him keep attacking, because even though up to this point in the season thus far, he's not been the most efficient player, the only way he's going to get back to his efficient self, in which we saw throughout the playoffs and in the finals, in which won him finals MVP, is if he keeps attacking, keeps playing his game, and keeps taking those open shots.
Talking about all of that, you could say the same thing for this guy right here, Peyton Pritchard. Fourth quarter P. Look at this, player spotlight P. This is what we're going to call him now, because this guy is just racking up the SeatGeek player spotlights. SeatGeek player of the game. Yeah, tonight's player of the game is sponsored by SeatGeek. Get your tickets. The holidays are right around the corner, guys. Who doesn't want to attend a Celtics game, especially around the holidays, especially when the Celtics are hosting the Philadelphia 76ers on Christmas Day? Grab your tickets at SeatGeek.com. Use code CelticsWeekly at checkout. for $20 off your first purchase. It's a great deal, guys. Definitely want to grab those tickets. Peyton Pritchard, his 4th straight game over 20 points. The first bench player to do this since 2015, Isaiah Thomas, when I'd say probably that's right around the time Isaiah Thomas got here, didn't start right away. But Peyton Pritchard tonight, fellas, 25 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 stocks, combined 2 steals and a block, 10 of 17, very well efficient. Didn't miss a 2-pointer, went 5 for 5 from 2-point range. His 7 misses were 3-point jump shots. And talk about a guy who really takes advantage of his opportunities. Guys talking about how JB doesn't like Tyler Hero. Talk about how Peyton Pritchard doesn't like Tyler Hero. He kept looking over at Spo saying, Spo, what are you doing? What are you doing, Spo? Franco, Miami Heat couldn't contain Peyton Pritchard in the 4th quarter.
Let's just change this over to the Peyton Pritchard postgame show and fit as many P's as we possibly can.
Postgame P.
Postgame P.
Bottom on.
Push and P. It's been an absolutely phenomenal performance we've been seeing from him. And Chris Forsberg, I think he's a Celtics Talk Weekly fan because I was comparing Peyton Pritchard to Isaiah Thomas in a few post-game shows ago, and I think it's just becoming more and more into fruition. I think we're seeing something that is going to grow into something even further. I think what he's become and the confidence that he has gained this season has really just changed the tone for this bench. I think having him coming off as the 6th man, especially with Jrue Holiday and Derek White stepping down, has been just almost a luxury for the Celtics and kind of keeping them afloat in these games where you're seeing Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum not performing. And they find that spark from him. We knew he was a spark plug, especially from his playoff performance from last year. And he's became much more than that. He's become the whole light. I think he's starting to grow into that 6th man of the year, and I think it's only going to grow and then some. And when his opportunity comes, I don't know if it will be as a starter, and I think he will get that starting look at some point, especially if there's an injury, and he'll start getting those minutes. But just having him off the bench is probably where he's the most comfortable right now, and it's been a pleasure to watch him grow.
It's made the most sense because right now, first of all, understand not even 25 game into the year, but remember a big thing that held guys like Bobby Portis and Emmanuel Quickley back from that 6th man of the year award just about a year or two ago was the fact that they started in multiple games throughout the course of the regular season. So now when we see the injury report, people, why aren't you starting Peyton Pritchard? Peyton Pritchard not starting. Peyton Pritchard feels the most comfortable coming off the bench, and he succeeds in every opportunity he gets off the bench. Now, here's the thing. When your backup is, we've been really hyping him up here these past couple nights, but when your backups are that short, you're that short of staff on a night where your backups are like Drew Peterson, Jordan Walsh, Jaden Springer, right? You want to keep Peyton Pritchard on that bench to give you that spark that you need. You don't want to just throw all your superpowers into the fire right away. That's just kind of how I look at it. That also might not be why I'm not the coach of the Boston Celtics, but that's just how I view it. And I will say that although the starters need to figure out, what's going on with these slow starts, because we've seen it for the past few weeks, we've seen a lot of slow starts from the starters. But what I will say is I'm sitting there and I'm like, we're down by like 12 right now, but Peyton Pritchard hasn't even entered the game yet. Peyton Pritchard is going to be that spark. And all of a sudden that becomes true. And Peyton Pritchard comes in and it's kind of like everything just flows. And Peyton Pritchard has control. It's almost like we always hear Joe Mazzulla loves it. Like tonight, the Celtics start the 3rd quarter, 4 straight turnovers. Drew Carter's talking about it after the timeout. Drew and Scala joking around saying that was probably Joe Mazzulla's favorite 4 possessions of the season. He just absolutely loves adversity. And that's just the type of guy Peyton Pritchard is, Seamus. Peyton Pritchard, guy who loves adversity, loves these types of nights where guys ahead of him are out. He can come in, shine the way he continues to shine.
Yeah, and Franco, you said it the other night about Peyton Pritchard really being, this is the first time we've seen a player like this since Isaiah Thomas really come off the bench and just light it up and be, we talked about it the other night too on a post game. Is he a top 5 Celtic right now? Is he potentially a top 3 Celtic? I mean, the
Right.
performances he's putting up on a nightly basis at this point, it's just incredible. Because a couple of seasons ago, we touched on it the other night as well, that this was a man who didn't have a spot on the team. He really didn't. He was behind a plethora of guards, and we didn't really have a spot for him. The Celtics didn't have a spot for him, and he essentially demanded or requested, however you want to state it, to be traded last offseason. Of course, that didn't happen. He wins a championship, comes up with just a classic Boston sports moment in game 5 of the NBA Finals with his patented half-court shot at the buzzer right before half, and I think everybody knew when that shot went in. Oh, we were winning the finals that particular night. And Peyton Pritchard coming into this season, out of every single player on the team, we talked about a lot of players on the team coming in with a newfound confidence that, oh, we're champions. There's a new confidence when champions go and play out the next season as defending champions because every other team is chasing them. They've met the status of champion, and now they're defending it. But out of every single player on the Celtics, we talk about Jason Tatum, we talk about Jaylen Brown, talk about Derek White, first-time champion, Drew Holiday, of course, multiple-time champion, Al Horford, a first-time champion, Kristaps Porzingis as well. Out of all those top 6 players, look at Peyton Pritchard as, of course, he's the 6th man now, but the 7th man in that group. I believe out of all those players, he's had the most newfound confidence from winning a championship and, of course, being inserted into the lineup not only this year, but last year as well, and making an impact within that rotation of the championship team last year and now this year, even more so as the favorite to win 6th man of the year right now. Peyton Pritchard, what he's doing right now was not foreseen at all, even last summer. And I'm really interested to see whether or not this continues moving forward because we are working in a little bit of a small sample size. But up to this point, it's the 5th year of Peyton Pritchard's career. He's still sort of a young NBA player. He's still developing. Last year, he was only a 4th-year player. Now he's coming into year 5. He's played with. Just think about how many guards he's played with. We mentioned this the other night, but we only mentioned Kemba Walker. He's played with Kemba Walker, Marcus Smart, Dennis Schroeder, who's lighting the NBA up right now, probably going to be one of the most highly sought after players on the trade market this year come deadline season. He's played with Drew Holiday, Derek White. He's played with Malcolm Brogdon. Just think about all the guards who he's played with since entering the NBA with the Celtics. Think about how many teaching moments he's had with those players, how many learning moments, rather, and teaching moments from them they've probably given Peyton Pritchard over time. To this point we're at now, where he's in year 5, he's favorite to win 6th man of the year. And now it's just an expectation that he's going to come in and light up the game off the bench every single night. I really cannot believe we're at this point. We were on post game 2 years ago, 3 years ago. None of us saw this coming for Peyton Pritchard whatsoever. We knew he was a very confident shooter, a very confident player, knew he could play a role with the Celtics, but we didn't see 6th man of the year potential in Peyton Pritchard and the two-way ability as well. Not only offensively is Peyton Pritchard a spark plug for the Celtics off the bench, but defensively he brings it every single night too as a 6'1" player. Teams want to pick on him, but they simply cannot from his athleticism, his speed, his activity, and his ability to just get up in guys' grills and not let bigger players past him and not let bigger players shoot over him. Peyton Pritchard has been absolutely phenomenal this season, and he's a big reason why the Celtics have consistently won games. Even you look at the lineup this year, it hasn't been the most consistent lineup. Porzingis missing quite a few games. Of course, the first 17 games, that is. Jaylen Brown, kind of in and out of the lineup. We saw Derek White. He missed last night. We've seen other guards too. Drew Holiday. We're having the conversation last night. Drew Holiday aging a bit. With all these other factors of the Celtics not being quite as consistent in other areas from what we saw last year, Peyton Pritchard has made up a little bit of that difference and made really all the difference for this year's Celtics team.
It's not his offense, Ian. I feel like because his offense, like we talk about with Drew Peterson in Sam Hauser. It's his defense. 2 steals tonight and a block for Peyton Pritchard. Guards 94 feet. That just is so important. He's like that junkyard dog on offense. You look at him, as Seamus said, and you look at his size and his height, and you figure I could just turn around and shoot over him. He presents a mismatch to just about everybody on that court.
Yeah, and I mean, like we say about Peyton Pritchard, his motor is probably one of the highest in the NBA. Like, when Peyton Pritchard's on the floor, there's not a whole lot of other people that are going to be on the other side of him that are going to outwork him or out-hustle him or pretty much do anything at a higher level than Peyton Pritchard, at least as of right now. Because all of the intangibles that come with Peyton Pritchard, that's kind of the thing that, I think people knew was possible, but never actually thought it would come to fruition. Because I remember his rookie year, he got a lot of playing time in his rookie season. And obviously because that Celtics team was not very good. They were ravaged by injuries. And so there were a lot of times where Peyton Pritchard had to play. And I think there were like moments that you could see Peyton Pritchard potentially being like somewhat of a future piece moving forward. You didn't know what that piece looked like, but there was something there. And that's why Brad Stevens didn't trade him when he asked for it. He knew that Peyton Pritchard was going to be this type of player. Obviously we didn't, but we're not working in an NBA front office, so we don't know all of these things. So the fact that Peyton Pritchard, who, he's an undersized guard, you don't see a whole lot of undersized guards in the NBA anymore. I mean, he's like 6'1", 6'2", so not really undersized, but compared to the average size of a point guard nowadays, it's smaller than normal. So the fact that he can go out there, he will always be the hardest working player on the floor, no matter what. And that's, probably the biggest key to his success right now.
If you look at it, and you mentioned how many guards that he's lasted. It's not like these guards got up and walked in free agency. Like, and you talked about Brad Stevens, like he's known all along and he's trusted Peyton Pritchard in these situations. Brogdon gets traded out to where did he go? He got traded in that in that trade in the offseason to get Drew. Then you see Marcus Smart gets traded for Kristaps Porzingis. You saw Kemba Walker get traded for Al Horford. Like, these guards have been traded out of town, dished out of town, and Peyton Pritchard has been the guy. I could have sworn I wouldn't have thought that there wouldn't have been a better fit than Peyton Pritchard going on the other end of that Portland deal last summer. Portland, Oregon, his hometown. Portland Trailblazers just got rid of Damian Lillard, looking for a young athletic guard. Peyton Pritchard kind of getting the shine in his hometown on his hometown team. They picked up Malcolm Brogdon. Brogdon gets injured that season, barely able to suit up for that team, and then is dished out to the Washington Wizards. So that shocked me when I read that tweet. And I saw that it was Malcolm Brogdon over Peyton Pritchard because they wanted Brogdon's veteran leadership. And I'm going to tell you, I hate to discredit Brogdon. He didn't do much for that Portland team. He didn't do much for my boy. He didn't do much for that Portland team, Franco.
That's my boy. He'll always be my boy, Malcolm Brogdon.
Oh, because you touched him, really, dude?
Like, he gave me a hug during a game.
Dude, Franco has the most. I wish we could put it up right now. He has the most ridiculous photo of himself and Malcolm Brogdon. Franco, aren't you in a green wig and Malcolm Brogdon is like coming over to like basically hug you?
Yeah,
like, it's 100. It's one of those you have to have it framed on your wall. I mean, it's just one of those pictures.
Yeah,
totally understandable.
I have to get it blown up, but I do have it printed.
It's got a frame
want
ready.
it bigger.
You don't. So you're telling me that you don't have it framed? You don't have anything?
He got traded before I could do it.
What do you mean? You could still do it right now. You don't have to get it signed necessarily, but you can't.
That's my homework. That's my homework, and I am going to get it signed.
And Seamus, your homework last night was to go through film and see how many backdoor cuts. Did you get any backdoor cuts? Did you get anything? Were you able to find anything? And if you did not get that, were you
Justin
able to?
Justin is literally putting me right now. You're putting me on the spot here, like I'm back in high school or something or middle school. I'm like, didn't quite do my homework. was too busy watching the Clippers game last night. I was too busy watching the Kings.
That's a good
Okay,
game.
wait.
Watching
Last night for real though
James
in the
Harden,
NBA.
James Harden bringing back that the stir the pot celebration back to that's old school.
I gotta say though, last night in terms of sports, I mean, phenomenal night of sports because we had the entirety of the NFL day yesterday, but then you had the snow game in Buffalo, and it feels like every single NBA game last night was close. Literally every single one.
See, I was on the worst end of both games yesterday because I was at the Patriots game where they lost on a 68-yard field goal attempt, and obviously watching the Celtics game. So I didn't have the greatest night watching sports last night.
Yeah, I was gonna say, well, Boston didn't have the greatest night watching sports, but from an entertainment perspective, we had a pretty good night.
The Bruins won their centennial game, so I guess that's all that matters, right?
And Derek White had the jersey on the sideline last night.
Oh my
there
goodness,
we go.
There he is.
There it is.
Yeah, look at that.
That, if you don't know, that's the idiot in the green wig is Franco. And that is, I mean, full extension. Looks like he's throwing up a cornet contest before the cornet contest is even. Oh, my goodness. Oh, my God. Oh, Franco. You know what? Listen, we're getting off topic here. Second night of a back-to-back. Celtics coming off a blowout win. I do want to say this. I woke up to the crack of dawn this morning, not to the rooster crowing on my fence, but to this text by Seamus Zarlingo saying, this is when I knew the Boston Celtics, no matter the injury report, was going to win this game. The revenge game from Drew Peterson tonight. Drew Peterson signed to a two-way deal with the Miami Heat, didn't get much run with them, eventually not getting any run with them, getting let go, signs with Boston in Summer League, dominates in the Summer League. Franco, we covered him, looked good in the preseason here in his second year with Boston, and, I mean, he's earned his spot these last two games, so definitely I gave my flowers to Drew Peterson last night, going to give them to him again tonight. I mean, stellar performance. But this, at 6:15 a.m., I said, you know what? Celtics are going to win this game tonight. I guarantee it. And Seamus guaranteed that there. So, Seamus, good call by you. Drew Peterson, revenge game for Drew Peterson. Miami can't take all the scary unknown white guys in the NBA. We got to have one for one point. And that's who we got here, Drew Peterson.
Well, Miami, I mean, they used to be the team of, oh, look, they found this random guy undrafted. Now they're developing them in Sioux Falls, which that was everybody's what do you call it? The assumption of why the Miami Heat developed all these guys, and why all these guys had motivation. It was you either play in Miami or you play in Sioux Falls up in South or North Dakota. I think it's South Dakota, right? Sioux Falls, South Dakota. So that G League discrepancy right there in terms of you're playing in Sioux Falls versus you're playing in Miami, Florida has never made any sense to me. But over the years, it seems to have done some good for the Miami Heat because they were always the team with the reputation of, hey, look, they're developing this undrafted player. Hey, look, this guy's actually coming in. I mean, look at two guys who absolutely dominated us. Now, one guy that he wasn't quite undrafted and wasn't quite developed entirely by the Miami Heat, but they picked him up as somebody who they eventually developed. But 2 years ago in the conference finals, Caleb Martin and Gabe Vincent, very much one of those players who it's like, my goodness, could these guys just cool down a little bit in the conference finals? But the Miami Heat always had that reputation of grabbing those undrafted guys, developing them further into their rotation. And now I feel like the Miami Heat reputation has gone a little bit to the Boston Celtics. I mean, look how many players off the bench tonight came in and contributed to the Boston Celtics. We go over it almost every post game now. First of all, Peyton Pritchard, again, 26th overall pick, not a guarantee whatsoever. You have Luke Cornett in there, former two-way guy with the Celtics. You have Drew Peterson in there, two-way guy right now. Jordan Walsh in there, mostly with the Maine Celtics, formerly known as the Maine Red Claws, of course. And you have all these players on the Boston Celtics. Sam Hauser, he didn't play tonight, unfortunately, but former two-way player in there. Nehemias Queta picked him up off of the Sacramento Kings waivers last year. After they waived him, we picked him up and made him a two-way player. And ultimately, all of these guys, they are playing actual minutes for the Celtics, give or take the game or the night. And it's not like they're starters or anything crazy like that. Of course, Peyton Pritchard, he's the one that's really lighting it up right now out of all those guys. But the rest of them, it's not like they're starters or really implemented pieces that we need in the rotation, but they're add-ons to the Celtics that we trust coming into the game, that they're playing with Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Drew Holiday, Derek White, Al Horford, Kristaps Porzingis, Peyton Pritchard. If they're playing with all of those guys and we're inserting them here, inserting them there, they can actually go out there and play and contribute to the Boston Celtics, much unlike some of the players we saw a couple of years ago where we had a couple of lottery picks who they weren't quite ready to play right away. Romeo Langford, Aaron Nesmith has turned into a great NBA player, but it's very shaky his rookie year. Very, very shaky his rookie year. And in the past, the Celtics, they weren't always known for bringing in players like this, developing them, and actually inserting them into the lineup. Now, of course, that does the top six in the Celtics lineup does do a lot for that, because when you have so much talent, you're able to match these other talents within that talent sphere. However, despite that, the fact the Celtics have been able to bring all those players along, we've kind of stolen that reputation from the Miami Heat just a little bit, I would say.
So are we saying Portland, Maine is now the new Sioux Falls, South Dakota?
It's like you don't want to go up to Portland, Maine, where it's 4 degrees colder up there. You just don't.
Oh,
I mean, like Portland's a nice town, but I mean, I can't lie. There's not much to do in Portland, Maine, and so I mean, I'm joking, obviously, but if you think about it, I mean, at least, I mean, I was counting. Let's talk about like legitimate rotation players that came out of the Maine Celtics system. You got Jordan Walsh, who started. He didn't do a whole lot in this game, but he still finished with a +10. Luke Cornett was with the Maine Celtics. Peyton Pritchard, I think, was in Maine at one point. I'm not 100% sure. I don't really remember.
A little bit.
Drew Peterson, obviously. Neemias Queta was in Maine a lot last year. And obviously I think we can throw in Baylor Shireman, too, who was also in Maine. JD played at the end, if you want to count JD. But I'm not going to count JD and Springer. But if we're talking about legitimate people that played in the rotation today, that's like, what, five players that came from out of the
whole lineup. Yeah.
Don't forget, last month, Porzingis and Tillman up in Maine, too.
if you want to count that. But let's just say that's like half of your rotation.
That's stat padding. That's throwing the ball at the rim.
Yeah.
But yeah, half of your rotation was developed in-house through your G League team. So that's not only a testament to how good the Celtics are at developing players, but also how good the Maine Celtics are at developing players. And the Maine Celtics, it feels like every year their head coach is getting poached by another team because they do such a good job. And I mean, you just got to shout out the development staff in Maine too, who are also kind of giving these players probably the confidence they need to go out there. Like, I mean, I think Abby Chin reported it earlier. Like when Joe Mazzulla called Drew Peterson's name off the bench last night, he was like he was thinking Drew Holiday. He wasn't thinking Drew Peterson. And so Drew Peterson came out there, he has like 30 career minutes in the NBA before last night and tonight. And I mean, that's just big minutes to your development staff. And he can go out there. He's ready to play. He's not just a guy that looks like a deer in the headlights out there. That's a testament to your development staff.
And also, like, I just want to say this, and I understand Miami was missing some players tonight. But like, this is a Miami team where it doesn't matter who they're missing. They usually always play us tough, and they're usually always there in the end. They're always, it doesn't matter what round, whether it's the conference finals or the first round, they're always there. They always seem to get there, whether it's with or without Jimmy Butler, or not. So this, for me, it's not like we watched the Celtics play a back-to-back against Washington and it was a crappy team in New Orleans out west, right? Like, this was against the Cleveland Cavaliers, a potential team we could see in May, and a Miami Heat team who we could see in April in a first or second round series, right? So like, these are legitimate playoff contenders that we're most likely going to meet down the line. And we're getting these guys like Drew Peterson, Jordan Walsh, Baylor Shireman, Peyton Pritchard, Sam Hauser, a lot of reps against these teams. So I did say it. It's equivalent to a curse word. I apologize to the folks at home.
Wait, let's clear this. Let's clear the air.
No,
I'm so confused on this story. Why do you hate Baylor Shireman?
First of all, First of all, we're not doing this live. Second of all, it's not hate. Baylor, I don't hate you, okay? Hate's a very strong word, okay? It's just I have very low patience, okay? I have very low patience. Go down in Maine, and he's doing great down in Maine, okay? I don't need him to go 0 for 5 in a real NBA game, okay? I'm just saying, okay? And there's a lot more other
bring
guys.
you to a meet and greet with him there.
I don't hate Baylor Shireman. I just don't think that he's like NBA ready, like should be in the rotation right now. Like go down in Maine. He's balling down in Maine. Like I just can't stand watching him play on. It's not helping me. Baylor, you're good. Okay, you're okay.
But the one thing I have about Baylor Shireman is like
he's reminding
me of
Grant
nitpicking
Williams.
so bad right now, and this is gonna be so bad. I don't know what's going on with his flow. He had like this like great flow going on with his hair in college, and now he's like just. It's like I'm getting rid of everything.
He shaved his head like right before media day.
Yeah, but he shaved his face too today. Like he just looked.
Yeah, I know.
Baby. Like,
listen, he's trying to figure out
he's
NBA
rookie,
facial hair.
Dude, now we're hating on his looks. It's like maybe go too far.
If we're talking about rookie facial hair, Jason Tatum
we're not hating on
fully grown beard until
he just looks like a baby.
Year 3, so let's give him time to find his own NBA facial hair.
But I do like, okay, in all seriousness, like he's killing it down in Maine. What is he averaging? Over 20, right?
25, I think.
25 down in Maine. Like that's where I want him. I want him down in Maine. I don't want him up here in Boston. I could be the reason why I'm not the GM, but like keep him down in Maine. Let him get the reps in Maine. When you have a rotation, a front court specifically, he's playing that 3 to 4 spot of Jason Tatum, Kristaps Porzingis, Al Horford, Jaylen Brown. Even throw in the backup bigs, like he's not cracking the rotation. Don't waste his time sitting there at the end of the bench, just like Jordan Walsh last year. Like I had the same thing with Jordan Walsh. I didn't hate him. I just didn't think there was a reason to keep him up in Boston. Let him go play down in Maine. Let him go get the reps down in Maine. And that's exactly what he's doing. So like, it's just like when I see him get in the game, I'm like, I just think tonight, like I was just looking at him. I'm like, he just reminds me so much of Grant Williams. Like he was just kind of just the way he runs and like the way he just uses it. Like I go back and watch the film. All right, that's your homework, Seamus, and you figure out why I'm not the biggest Baylor Shireman guy. All right, but here's the conclusion.
Reminds us too much of Grant.
Yes, reminds me too much of Grant Williams, and I'm not a big.
Prayers up for Grant,
great
though.
Guy.
Yeah, nah, I mean, shredded his ACL. Yeah, that's terrible. What's going on with all these Celtics players? And then. Ian posts a highlight reel of Robert Williams, then Robert Williams gets concussed, and then he's out for a while. So, I mean,
Marcus got sent to the bench in Memphis, but he's getting outplayed by Jalen Wells. But Marcus, he seems to be. He's had a couple good games recently, though. So, I think Marcus is doing fine.
So I think and I do attest to what your point is, Seamus, about how well the development staff is down in Maine. Baylor Shireman's going to turn into a great player and hopefully a player that we could use, a left-handed shooter. I love me a left-handed shooter. I'm a left-handed shooter. There's a reason why Baylor Shireman's in the G League and I'm not, though, right? So he's clearly better than me. But he's doing very, very well in Maine. He's very consistent in Maine, and he's bringing a lot to that Maine team. And I think that is exactly what his career needs. I don't need him up here in Boston taking up a bench spot. I don't need that. Keep him down in Maine. Unless you're gonna play him, unless it's a second night of a back-to-back, all the guys are out. You're playing Detroit, you're playing Washington. Boom, let him play. But tonight he played. He looked solid. Got a few nice rebounds. But we're spending way too much time talking about Baylor Shireman.
Oh, we had to clear the air here on the Baylor Shireman. I don't want to call it hate because you say you didn't hate him.
We'll call it discrepancy. Discrepancy, we'll call it.
The Baylor Shireman. Yeah, I mean, sure.
I don't hate him. I don't hate. You used hate, and I want you to apologize for using the word hate because that's pretty strong.
It was more of a dislike. I feel like you're giving off dislike vibes. I don't know. Hate was Georges Niang last night. I feel like that was.
Oh, don't get me.
I'm so sorry to bring his name up 2 post games in a row, but it definitely feels like that was the hate segment.
The mini.
Should we just have one of those every post game? Just All right, who are we hating on tonight? We'll do the formal internet routine.
We gotta
you
avoid
get that between 2 and 6 o'clock at Felger and Maz on 98.5. You're not getting that between the hours of 10 and 12 here on Celtic Talk Weekly. That's just not happening. We can't be negative Celtics Talk Weekly. We're gonna be positive.
But here's the difference between us and them. They hate their own teams. We don't hate our own teams. We hate on other
you said I hated Baylor Shireman. I don't hate Baylor Shireman.
All right. We're rambling here.
That's good. We need the rambling. we need to. It's second night of back to back. We blew out the Miami Heat. Like, what else is new? Like, we need something to ramble about. And I will say, in all seriousness, the Celtics do have a tough stretch coming up here this week. I believe they have Detroit Wednesday, and then Friday, Saturday? It is Friday, Saturday. Milwaukee and Memphis. You see Giannis one night, John Morant and Marcus Smart the next night. Detroit Pistons, Franco. This is a team where, you know me, I'm high on the Detroit Pistons since last year. Brought in a lot of solid role players. They're definitely a different team than we saw last year. What can we expect looking ahead here Wednesday night? Assuming most of the guys, if not all the guys, are back in the rotation.
I mean, people who called me a madman for calling the Detroit Pistons a play-in team before the season began. And I'm going to hold true to that until it happens. And I think it was just that they made the right moves and brought in the right veteran pieces who weren't going to find the opportunities. Like a Tobias Harris wasn't going to be that same star anywhere else other than Detroit. But now he can rebuild that confidence. And he's also surrounded by a whole bunch of young talent. You have Cade, Ivy, you have Thompson, Stewart, Durant, and I think they are a very good team that's going to develop into a competitive team, and they're going to be almost a trap team is the good word to describe them. Is they're going to win games that they're not supposed to, and they're going to lose games that they're supposed to, or lose games that they're supposed to win. And I think once they get the starters back into the offense, this isn't a team that the Celtics should struggle with, but it's going to be a little bit more back and forth than you would expect from a Detroit Pistons and Boston Celtics matchup.
Yeah,
I'm excited for the.
Go ahead, Ian.
I was gonna say I'm excited for the game against Detroit. The Pistons the last few times, I mean, they've made it a pretty competitive game against the Celtics. I mean, they took them to overtime last year. I think Jaylen Brown was out in that game or something. I can't remember. Somebody big was out in that game, but Porzingis and Tatum and White were there. But yeah, I don't know. Pistons are a good young team. I don't know. I think I was just a year too early on them. I had them making the play-in last year. Obviously, that didn't happen. But this season,
just outside.
A little bit,
just a little bit, by a bit.
Just a little bit. But this season, they're starting to put it together. Cade Cunningham is a star. I like Jalen Duren a lot, and they just have like a lot of good young guys that all seem to play really well together. And it's just one of those things where they have Tobias Harris and Tim Hardaway Jr., who are. They are definitely veterans in this league, and they have played roles on teams that have made playoff appearances. So, but if they could get like a legitimate veteran guy in there, I mean, I don't know how much more legitimate you can really get if you're going to play for the Detroit Pistons, but I don't know if they can get like a Derek White kind of guy, like he doesn't have to be a superstar number 2 next to Cade Cunningham. But if you can get a guy who can play at a very elite level next to Cade Cunningham, who has some experience in the NBA, I feel like that would do wonders for the Pistons. I don't really know who that guy is out there, but I feel like if you give them a little more veteran presence, I think they're going to go a long way.
Like, did Monty
get picked up anywhere?
No, he's still overseas.
And also another question is, when that expiration on the luxury tax hits, and his contract in the EuroLeague expires, will he be able to be added back to the Celtics roster? Because that was something that was talked about in the beginning of when he was first released, is the possibility of them bringing him back when that luxury hit expires.
That's a Seamus question.
It could happen, but I feel like here's the thing. I feel like if there was a chance for him to actually stick around, he would be in Maine. But also,
Yeah.
with that being said, he had the chance to make more money overseas. So it's not impossible that he comes back with the Celtics, but it almost feels like I don't want to say he was done wrong here in a sense, but I don't think anybody looks at Jaden Springer and his 2 minutes tonight and goes, "Oh yeah, Jaden Springer deserved the last spot over him." It was really a money thing. It was really "Oh, we don't want to pay extra money towards the luxury tax in order to sign Lonnie Walker." And I think there is a little bit of that from Lonnie Walker's perspective, going, "This team didn't exactly want me or think I was valuable enough to add money to their books for my services." And I think there are going
Mm.
to be plenty of teams out there who are going to be willing to give him that minimum contract later in the season because I believe Keith Smith from Spotrac and the front office show, shout out to that show, by the way, a phenomenal basketball show between him and Trevor Lane. But Keith Smith, he wrote an article about 2 months ago about how the two-way spots have essentially killed the 15th roster spot in the NBA. Teams will just leave that 15th roster spot open for the entirety of the season, leave it open, and they'll shuffle guys in and out of the lineup throughout the season with the two-way spots, as we saw the last two games with Drew Peterson. Look at Drew Peterson. That's exactly what we've been doing with Drew Peterson the last two games. We go, hey, we can maybe use an extra guy on the roster here. Let's bring in one of our two-way players. We could have
Mm.
brought in Anton Watson. We could have brought in JD Davison. We decided to bring in Drew Peterson. And it's kind of killed the 15th roster spot in the NBA because teams, they don't want to add extra money to their books and they want to retain that flexibility to potentially add somebody later on down the line in the season when they can tell where their actual competitive stage is. Some teams, they're kind of middling on that line of, okay, we might be competitive or we might
Mm.
be kind of lottery bound, and that will really determine where teams want to go with that spot later on in the season. And two-way spots have essentially killed that 15th spot for veteran players. And like I said, Keith Smith on Spotrac had a phenomenal article about that 2 months ago. But I want to touch on the Detroit Pistons here because I think as the Celtics Talk Weekly crew here, analysts, the analyst panel, I think we all respect the Detroit Pistons
Yeah.
after the hardships they brought the Celtics the last few seasons, dating back to 2020, 21. I mean, really every game against the Detroit Pistons, we were expecting, all right, here we go. We get a
Yeah.
crack at the Pistons. Here we go. We're going to extend their losing streak. And then all of a sudden we're down 20 and fighting for our lives and fighting in
In
overtime and
overtime.
fighting for our reputation. I mean,
Who's
do the
was
Celtics
tweeting?
even win the championship? Is it even worth winning the championship last season if they don't beat the Detroit Pistons in December? And if they're not the ones, of course, it ended up being, was it the Brooklyn Nets, if I'm not mistaken? Might have been another
That was
team
the
who.
Raptors. It was
Oh
the
yes, it was the
Raptors.
right. No, the Nets the night before us almost lost to the Pistons. Dorian Finney-Smith went crazy
Mm.
and prevented them from winning a game, and it was like, oh, it's all up to the Celtics. Oh, here we go, here we go. And the Celtics, of course, go down 20, and we eventually win in overtime in that game and extend their losing streak. But we could have held the reputation of the Pistons finally get a win against the Boston Celtics. But thankfully, we won that game last year, and we've won quite a few games against the Pistons, but they have not been easy, even when the Pistons have been bad. And this season, I'm right in there with the Pistons with you guys, Ian and Franco. I think the Pistons, they're going to make a play-in spot this year. And I would advise them maybe to lose in the play-in tournament, because if they lose in the play-in tournament, they retain their draft pick. And if they make the playoffs, their draft pick goes to, I believe the Spurs might be another team, or it might be the Minnesota Timberwolves. Might be getting my teams mixed up here. But the Detroit Pistons, they're in a spot of competitiveness right now. The bottom of the East is just
Yeah.
yikes, yikes. And the Pistons, they don't want to be just floundering with those teams forever. You don't want to be a Charlotte Hornets team who's essentially ever since they shouldn't say given up on Kemba Walker, but let Kemba Walker walk to the
Huh.
Boston Celtics. They had the worst situation in the NBA, and to this day, they continue to be one of the worst situations in the entire NBA. I mean, the 12th, 13th spot in the East is basically reserved for the Charlotte Hornets every single season, and they don't have a trajectory going forward. Meanwhile, the Detroit Pistons, with all the young players you mentioned, Franco, they have that trajectory going forward. And if the Pistons, they can put up similar seasons like the Grizzlies. Now they overexceeded quite a bit 2 seasons ago when they made the playoffs and faced the Minnesota Timberwolves in round 1. But you think about the Memphis Grizzlies. You think about the what team was I just thinking about? Just escaped my brain. But the Oklahoma City Thunder, that was not the team I was thinking about. But the Oklahoma City Thunder made the play in before last season as the 10th seed, won one game, then went out in the play-in tournament. They were in the lottery. And of course, the next season, they're the number 1 seed in the conference. The Minnesota Timberwolves, you can say them as well. They were in the play-in. They were going up, up, up. And then all of a sudden, look where they're at. They're the number 2 seed. I'm not saying the Detroit Pistons will be that, number 2, number 3, number 4 seed next year, but you want to put your spot, you want to make a spot within the conference of competitiveness, and you want to just carve out that spot and go, well, look, we've actually had some playoff experience or some play-in experience. That's really what the play-in is for, too, is just really those teams at the bottom. Can they get in? Some of those maybe undeserved teams in the past where, okay, they didn't have the greatest record to start the season, but they finished the season strong, and ultimately they make the play, and maybe they make the playoffs, and they gain some playoff experience going into that next season, and that does a lot. Another team I wanted to bring up too, we just faced them last night. I cannot believe I forgot this team. The Cleveland Cavaliers, 21-22. They really should have made the playoffs that year, but they were injured, just hellacious injuries at the end of that season. They ended up making the play-in, but another example of a young team making the play-in, or rather making the playoffs too, and eventually, later on in time, they make the move for Donovan Mitchell, and look where they're at. The number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference right now, and we're actually having trouble defeating them on a nightly basis, where a couple weeks ago in Boston, 3-point game. Last time, of course, we lost to them. This is what needs to happen for these young developing teams, and the Pistons are very much that team right now where can they grab that 9 spot? Can they grab that 10 spot? Can they be a little bit competitive in the play-in or the playoffs?
Right.
And they don't have to win a series or anything like that, but just gaining the experience for future seasons later on down the line when those scenarios eventually come up again. And it's not only in the playoffs, could be the regular season too, where they look at it, they're close games. The Pistons, they played quite a few close games this season, but in future seasons, they'll be in those scenarios once again, and they can look at their experience and go, look, guys, we've been here. We've been in a playoff, play-in spot. We've been in a competitive spot. We've been in a close moment. We know what we can do. And that's just part of the building blocks of building a franchise and building a team, a specific iteration, that is, of a team, up into a point of competitiveness where they can really just compete and be with the other teams amongst the top of the league, because that ladder, it's not an easy ladder to climb.
No, not at all. Listen, Celtics are going to have to climb a little ladder on Wednesday night against the Detroit Pistons. I will say Detroit will be on a second night of a back-to-back, because tomorrow night, Tuesday, they play their final group stage game against Milwaukee Bucks. Now, you might be asking, why am I bringing that up? That's because if you still give a damn about the NBA Cup, the Celtics still have a slim chance at getting into the knockout round. Now, it is not up to the Boston Celtics. The Celtics have decided their fate. It is up to other remaining teams. I believe it's the Knicks in the Orlando Magic play tomorrow night. You prefer the Orlando Magic to win because that path is a lot easier. If you prefer the Knicks to win, well, you better prefer the Knicks to win by 38 points, because that's exactly what you need them to beat the Orlando Magic by. And I'll tell you right now, that is not going to happen. And if it does, I'll be damned. You need the Orlando Magic to beat the New York Knicks tomorrow night. So we're all Magic fans. Oscar, my buddy Oscar, who runs the Magic Report, shout out to you. We're all Magic fans tomorrow night. And you also need Franco, shut up. Shut up, Franco. Shut up, Franco. Turn your TV down. Turn your TV down. We also need to focus on that Detroit-Milwaukee game. Now, if Orlando beats New York, we need either Milwaukee to beat Detroit by 6 or Detroit to beat Milwaukee by 5 or more. Gets wonky, right? So anything over 6 points, we'd much rather them get over that 5 hump. So we need Milwaukee or Detroit to finish in a +6 victory on either end, and we need Orlando to defeat the New York Knicks, preferably by anything, but not. It comes down to point differential and all that crap. So we're all New York fans tomorrow. We're all fans of whoever Milwaukee and Detroit ends, as long as it's +6. That's the fate of the NBA Cup. Do you get it? No, probably not. I'm not going to explain it to you any better. But the Boston Celtics grab another victory tonight. Their 17th victory of the regular season. They've now won 8 of their last 9. A huge bounce back win after losing last night in Cleveland, 108-89. The Boston Celtics are back in action, as I mentioned, Wednesday night against the Detroit Pistons. They host them 7:30 p.m. tip-off. We will have you covered right back here on Celtics Postgame Live. For Justin Lowe, Seamus Starlingo, Ian Angelo, and Nick Franco. Catch you guys Wednesday.